But he's done a lot of great work there at Apologetics Press. He served there for 16 years or better in their Bible department. He's married to the former Bethany Glass. They have 3 children. 2 of them are with them here tonight, Anna Claire and Reed. Drew, their oldest, is away at camp. But we're glad to have this family with us. They've been a whole lot to this church in so many ways through the years, and we're grateful and thankful to have him with us. He'll be presenting the devotional at this time, and then after we're dismissed to classes, he will be teaching the class here in the auditorium.
You might think that that picture bears a striking resemblance to Brother Tim when he had a little bit more hair, but that is not what we've got going there. In 2004, the sheep ranchers in New Zealand found this particular sheep. Now, what's interesting about this sheep that they named Shrek is that it was their sheep, but it was a sheep that had eluded them for the past 6 years. In 1998, for some reason, Shrek decided he did not want to be caught. Maybe he felt like he wanted to hang on to his wool for some reason.
Maybe he didn't like being in line with all the rest of the sheep. Maybe he just felt like, I'm going to sow my wild sheep oats. For some reason, Shrek decided he wasn't going to be caught. And he wasn't. Not in 98, they didn't find him. In 99,
they didn't find him. For 6
years, Shrek successfully eluded the sheep
ranchers who gathered all the other sheep up every year, annually, and took them in to be shorn. Now, when they pulled Shrek in, you can see that the Shrek had a problem. The average merino sheep, like he is, grows wool that weighs approximately 10 pounds. That is shorn, generally speaking, annually, so that that sheep can move around and can stay healthy and can get to the places it needs to go. When Shrek came in, Shrek looks like a really big sheep. Well, that's because the weight of the wool that is on Shrek's body is 6 times that of the average merino sheep. His wool weighs 60 pounds. Now, let's put that into a little bit more practical thinking ideas. That's enough to, if they were to take the wool off of Shrek the sheep and make it into suits, they could make not 5 large men's suits, not 10 large men's suits, not 15. They could make 20 large men's suits out of the wool that Shrek had on his body. Now, like I said, you think Shrek looks big and healthy there, but the fact of the matter is, after they took the wool off of Shrek, he looked quite a bit different. You see, here was his problem. He had been hiding from his owners, the ranchers, for the last 6 years because for some reason he didn't want to be where they were, didn't want to be in the cage, didn't want to have his wool shorn. But in the course of that, as that wool got heavier and heavier and heavier, Shrek got weaker and weaker and weaker. And when they finally did shear Shrek underneath, he was malnourished. He could hardly get around, and he was very close to almost dying. Now, what are we learning from Shrek? You know, sometimes isn't it the case that we look at our shepherd, Jesus, and Jesus calls us to Him and He says, come to me. But for some reason, there's stuff about the way Jesus does things that we don't like. Maybe He's got some regulations, some rules that we think, we don't want to be a part of those. Maybe He has some ideas, some sacrifices He wants us to make. And we think, no, we'll just stay out in the wilderness. We don't want you to take us into your fold, because if you do that, you're going to shear off our sin. And we kind of want to hang on to our sin. And so we wander around in that wilderness of sin, and that sin is not taken care of by our Savior, the Shepherd, and it grows and becomes heavy and starts wearing us down, and it becomes the weight on us that causes us to stop growing and really begins to strangle our spiritual health. And if we would just listen to Jesus, as He said, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, are carrying a heavy burden, come to me and take my yoke upon you and learn of me. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light, and you will find rest for your souls. You know, it could be tonight that there are some of you here, one of you, two, three, that you've been staying in the wilderness and not coming into your shepherd on a regular basis. You've been thinking that it would be better to live with your sin than to let Jesus take care of that for you. You've just been holding on to that sin, and it becomes a burden, doesn't it? The guilt, the way that you have to hide it from others, the manipulations you have to go through to stay away from being found out. Are you heavy with sin? Is there something in your life that you need to get taken care of this evening? Are you like Shrek, who has tried to stay away from the shepherd, but in the end his sin was just so heavy he could hardly hold up underneath it? Do you need to come to Jesus tonight? Do you have something, if you're not a Christian, and you've been in that wilderness of sin for years and years, is it time that you become one of Jesus' sheep, repenting and being baptized to be added to the fold? If you are a Christian, you know, I'm thinking of a person right now that if you were to have seen this man in the pew, you would have thought he was a fine, upstanding individual. In fact, I believe he was a deacon in the Lord's church at the time, had a wonderful Christian family, and for the past several months, he had been stealing from the company where he was working. Couldn't see anything different from the outside. Looked like everything was going well. And I don't know if it was a Sunday night, he came forward and he repented. Can you understand how much freer he felt when he brought his sin to Christ and put it before the church? And he followed that instruction in James where it says, confess your trespasses to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The effective fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Can you imagine the freedom that he felt? After all those months hiding and manipulating and trying to get stuff going, he just lays it bare and says, I'm sorry, I've sinned, take this from me, Christ, and Christ does. Do you need to do that tonight? Do you need to respond to the Lord's invitation in any way? If you need to come and bring your sin to Christ and take that burden off of you, please do that as we stand and as we sing.